Please welcome Nadya Okamoto and Vincent Forand.
Hi everyone, I'm Nadya Okamoto. I'm 20 years old and I'm a rising junior at Harvard College.
Hi there, I'm Vincent Forand and I'm 21 and I'm at Cornell University as a junior.
And we're here to talk about, well...
periods.
Exactly. So my passion for periods comes from a very personal place. I know it's not the most common thing to be very passionate about or obsessed with, but I am. And my passion for periods starts when I was about 15 years old. My family experienced living without a home of our own and experiencing a lot of financial and housing instability. And during this time, I had many conversations with homeless women who were in much worse living situations than I was in. And they would tell me their stories and we would bond with each other over our shared experience of growing up with domestic abuse and sexual assault. And I started asking them what's the most challenging thing about their living situation. And that's when I discovered the unaddressed natural need of periods. I accidentally collected this anthology of their stories of using toilet paper, socks, brown paper grocery bags, cardboard, and cotton balls to take care of their period. And it sparked this sort of anger within me, obsession with period poverty, but also this big privilege check. Because even in this time when my family was experiencing legal homelessness, and I felt very underprivileged compared to a lot of my classmates at our private school, at the same time, I never had to use trash to take care of my periods. And I grew up in a family that was comfortable talking about periods, so I didn't whisper the word period or tampon like it was something to hide as much, right? So I sort of became obsessed with periods, and I swear I have friends when I say this, but in my free time, I would sit by myself in front of my computer and Google keywords around period poverty and anything like that. I learned that periods are the #1 reason why girls miss school in developing countries. Period-related pain is a leading cause of absenteeism for girls in the US. And then in 2014, 40 states in the US had a sales tax on period products, considering them as a luxury. Meanwhile, products like Rogaine and Viagra were considered essential goods. So as me, for a budding 16-year-old feminist, I would sit there and think to myself, are you fucking kidding me? Right? Like, with that statement, it's saying that old man hair growth and erections are considered more of a necessity than over half of our global population feeling clean, confident, capable 100% of the time, regardless of a natural need. So that's when I decided that I needed to do something. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that nonprofit was a word that meant doing something good, right? That's all I knew. So I went to my mom, who had worked in nonprofit, and said, Mom, I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna start a nonprofit. And her first reaction was, are you sure? Like, it's a lot of work, there's a lot of things that you might not really like all the admin of it, the operations of it. You like the vision stuff, you need someone who can complement you. So I sort of thought about it, I reflected on the people in my life, and I knew of this kid who was super organized and was always the first person done with the Excel spreadsheets in math class and then helped everyone else. And I hate Excel spreadsheets. So that's where I started, and that's where Vince came in.
Exactly. And so really, what really started the whole conversation for how I got involved was I was in one of the lounges on our campus doing homework, as always, and Nadya approached me with the idea of period. And the way she did it, many times when Nadya is like really excited about something, and as you can tell, very passionate person in general, at the time, it was kind of a word blender. Many of the sentences kind of blurred together, and really all I heard was tampons and starting a business. And so for me, I, at that time, was thinking about entrepreneurship in my own life, and I was really wanting to do something to change the world at a young age, and I really wanted to start a business, but I had no spark whatsoever. I just hadn't any specific ideas. I wanted to do something in social good, but I had no idea what I wanted to latch onto. And then Nadya approached me with this idea in almost the perfect timing at sophomore year of high school, and so I just said yes. And definitely will say, I had no idea what a period was. So it was kind of taking a leap, Exactly.
So at the age of 16 years old, I found a co-founder who didn't know what menstruation was. And a lot of that is because today, even in, then in 2014 and still today, when periods are talked about to young people in school, they're taught in gender-segregated classrooms, which is an issue because it enforces the gender binary, and I'm not even gonna get started on that. But also, it means that meanwhile the girls learn that what a tampon is, what a pad is, what menstruation is, and how to use it, but they learn that you only talk about periods behind closed doors with only other girls. Cisgender girls. Meanwhile, the guys never hear about periods. So Vince, not having any sisters, never really had to learn what menstruation was. So that was the first thing we did as co-founders, was teach Vince what a period was. So the next thing we did was decide that we needed a work session. And so we met at Starbucks for about 6 hours that Saturday, and we sort of had this unspoken commitment of we don't know what the fuck we're doing, but we're gonna do it anyways. And we literally Googled questions like, what is a nonprofit?
What is a 501c3?
What is the IRS? What is a board of directors?
Exactly.
And we just kept asking questions and just doing what we thought was the simple steps we needed to do to address getting period products to people who needed them. I started pitching to anyone who would listen. I would try busking on the street, realizing that did not make enough money worth my time. I started going into any staff meeting I could find and just try pitching to them. I once went to an auto mechanic store, to a Jiffy Lube location. I just said, I just want to try out a pitch. Can I just speak at one of your staff meetings? I cannot tell you, but as soon as I would say the word period, every guy in the room, all guys in the room, would drop their sandwiches and sort of disgust as soon as I said menstruation. But it was interesting because I had this spark. I thrived off of that. Even when I said, hi, I'm here to talk about periods, I noticed some men in the room going, right? I love that. It's exciting because it means that we have a real chance to make change, and I hope that by the time we're done with our talk, you're excited to be a period warrior with us. Anyways, so from there, I learned what pitches worked, what didn't, and so I went on Eventbrite. I just typed in pitch competition, and I went to most of them and won all of the ones I tried out for. Thank you. We started with a small pot of money, and naturally, what did we do?
Essentially what we did was we tried to hit the most impact as possible, so we bought out Dollar Trees, we bought out Walmarts in our entire area to get these menstrual hygiene products all in the care package supplies. And we worked with the nonprofit partners in our specific area. Portland specifically, in Portland, Oregon, where we're both from, has a very large concentration of homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters, women's shelters. So we reached out to all of them and just contacted them saying, we want to provide you menstrual hygiene products. We're assuming that you probably don't actually provide as much as you think. And so for us, we were just going for straight impact. Every single dollar that we raised, we spent directly on products.
Exactly. And naturally, as part of Gen Z, we were just posting on social media. And we just used social media by inviting our friends over to join us to put together packs of period products. And within a matter of months, we had hundreds of messages from students from all around the country and journalists from around the country saying, we've never thought about period poverty, how do we get involved? And so Vince and I sat down and we just wrote down everything we did in our community and we said, do this in your own community. And that's how we started our chapter network. So Period, we are now the largest youth-run NGO in women's health in the world. We're a global youth-run NGO that provides and celebrates periods. We're trying to fight to end period poverty and period stigma through service, education, and policy. So what that means is we distribute period products to people in need. We're working to change the way people think, talk, and learn about periods. And we're now working from the local to the federal level around period policy, working towards menstrual equity.
And so for impact at this point, to date, we've provided almost 500,000 periods worth of products and supplies to those in need, and have over 260 registered campus chapters in universities, high schools, all with a commitment to help provide period products in their own communities as well. And so we kind of built a movement accidentally.
Accidentally built a movement. 2018 was sort of the year we really scaled up. I'm currently taking a leave of absence from Harvard because I just published my debut book with Simon & Schuster called Period Power, a Manifesto for the Menstrual Movement. And I wrote the book because, thank you. I wrote the book inspired by Gloria Steinem and all the work that she did, and I remember when learning about second wave feminism, they had these defining manifesto texts that sort of set up, this is what we're doing in this movement. So that's what I did with this book, and we're now moving forward. We're working with major brands and media partners to try to spread the word about periods and normalize the normal. So when I try to convince people to care about periods in the menstrual movement, I always frame it in this way that the menstrual movement is the key to global development and achieving gender equality and equity around the world. How I define the menstrual movement is that it's the fight for equitable access to menstrual hygiene and breaking the stigma around periods. When you look at how the United Nations and the World Health Organizations of the world define gender equality, it sort of falls into these 4 buckets: education, healthcare, economic mobility, and representation in politics and decision-making. We've already talked about how a lack of access to period products are a huge barrier for success in education, healthcare, and economic mobility. But it's also a big issue we need to bring into politics and pushing more women and menstruating people into positions of power. When we think about here in the US, still about 80% of our congressional positions are held by men. And if that 80% of men are afraid to talk about periods and acknowledge it as a natural need, it will continue to go unaddressed. At the same time, we see that periods and hormone imbalances continue to be some sort of reason why women can't hold high positions of power. A period was literally used as an excuse in the 2016 presidential election as to why Hillary Clinton couldn't hold office, which I find ridiculous because Hillary Clinton was too old to get her period. The last point I really want to focus on, though, because it shows us that this is not just a women's issue. This is a human issue. If you don't get your period, you either know someone, you love someone, or you're here because menstruation makes human life possible. People are still surprised when Vince comes up with me and says he's the co-founder. They usually, like the Makers Conference, thought we were dating. Because why else would a non-menstruating, cisgender, male-identifying man be so involved in the menstrual movement?
Exactly. That's what happens.
But I promise you, we are just good friends, and we've loved working on this together, and I love working with Vince because he's able to bring on so many non-menstruating male-identifying friends of ours to join the movement as well.
Exactly. And so next, or basically what we're trying to accomplish now is really empowering the young period warriors. These are chapters and the chapter members, and making sure that they feel like they're fully equipped to make the change that we want to see in a more larger scale. We're also trying to repeal the tampon tax in the remaining 35 states. Nadia mentioned 40 states in 2014, but now in 2019, there's only 35 more states that have the tampon tax that we're trying to repeal. And then finally, we're also trying to end period poverty in schools by providing free menstrual hygiene products in all college campuses and high schools through many of our campus chapters, as well as through our own national endeavors.
Exactly. So we're standing before you today not only as 2 passionate activists, period warriors in this menstrual movement, but also 2 very proud members of Generation Z. And with the theme of this year's conference being all of us, I not only want one of our messages to be all of us in this menstrual movement, but all of us being committed to empowering young leaders in this world. We came across so many no's and rejections when we were getting started. And I just want to say that if we underestimate young people today, we won't be achieving our full potential as a global population. Aside from my work at Juve, I'm also Chief Brand Officer at Juve Consulting, which is a Gen Z marketing agency that employs hundreds of Gen Z people all around the world to work with major brands from small organizations all the way to the Microsofts and Verizons of the world. And Generation Z is not, you cannot ignore Generation Z. We are big. We are the largest segment of a population in the history of the world. We're 26% of the global population. We're 46% of the total media audience. When you look at the data around Generation Z, we are driven change makers, fed up with the world around us, mad that the adults haven't taken care of issues that seem so blatantly clear to us, like the tampon tax, and we're ready to take action no matter what. We're defying this idea that you need a certain number of degrees or qualifications or professional experience to get started, and we just go for it. And that's the mentality that pushed me to start this organization with Vince when we were 16. That's the mentality that pushed me to run for public office for Cambridge City Council when I was 19 years old. And that's the mentality that I had when I wanted to write a book, and I just Googled how to write a book. So with that, thank you so much for listening and talking about periods.